What people misunderstand about Machiavelli: not praise, not condemnation. Clarification. Most people encounter Machiavelli not through his writing, but through a reputation. His name circulates as shorthand for manipulation, cruelty, and the cynical belief that the end justifies the means. In popular culture, to call something Machiavellian is rarely neutral. It is usually an accusation. And yet, very few of the people who use that word have actually read Niccolo Machiavelli. What most people know is not Machiavelli the thinker, but Machiavelli the caricature. A simplified figure constructed over centuries, flattened into a symbol of moral coldness. That gap between what Machiavelli analyzed and what people believe he stood for is where most misunderstandings begin. This video is not about defending Machiavelli. It is not about praising him, excusing him, or rehabilitating his image. It is about separating what he actually analyzed from what people project onto him. Most criticisms of Machiavelli are aimed at a caricature, not the thinker himself. Misunderstanding 1. Machiavelli promoted evil. The most common accusation is also the simplest. Machiavelli taught rulers to be cruel. He encouraged deception, manipulation, and oppression. According to this view, The Prince is not a book of analysis, but a manual for immorality. The problem with this interpretation is that it mistakes description for endorsement. Machiavelli did not write a book of moral instruction. He did not set out to explain how rulers should behave in an ideal world. He wrote an observational report on how power actually behaves under conditions of instability. A useful analogy is medicine. When a doctor describes how a disease progresses, no one assumes the doctor is advocating the disease. Description is not celebration. Analysis is not approval. Machiavelli never wrote, "You should be cruel." Different. What he did was examine moments in history and say, in effect, here is what rulers tend to do when they feel threatened. Here is what happens when power fears collapse. That distinction matters. When Machiavelli discusses cruelty, deception, or force, he is not presenting them as virtues. He is identifying them as tools that appear repeatedly when authority feels insecure. His concern is not goodness, but durability. Not righteousness, but survival. This is uncomfortable for many readers because it strips away moral reassurance. It does not tell us that power will naturally align with our values. It tells us that power reacts to pressure in predictable ways, often in ways that conflict with ethical ideals. Explaining how power behaves is not the same as endorsing that behavior. Misunderstanding 2. Machiavelli hated morality. A second misunderstanding follows naturally from the first. If Machiavelli did not prioritize moral virtue in his analysis, then he must have rejected morality altogether. This is where he is often portrayed as anti-ethical, even nihilistic. But Machiavelli did not argue that morality is meaningless. He questioned where morality belongs in the analysis of power. His core question was one of order, not denial. Morality before survival, or survival before morality? Machiavelli's argument was stark but precise. A collapsed state cannot enforce moral ideals. Ethical principles require a functioning structure to sustain them. Without stability, morality has no mechanism through which it can operate. This does not mean morality is false. It means morality is fragile. Machiavelli drew a distinction that many readers resist: the difference between personal morality and political survival. Personal ethics govern how individuals relate to one another in intimate, local contexts. Political power, by contrast, operates at scale, under uncertainty, and under threat. When Machiavelli analyzed power, he did not begin with moral ideals because moral ideals do not explain how power responds to existential risk. They explain how humans wish power would behave, not how it actually does. This is why his writing feels cold, not because he rejected morality, but because he refused to let morality obscure analysis. Machiavelli did not say morality was wrong. He said morality was not the first layer of understanding power, and for many readers, that distinction is deeply unsettling. Misunderstanding 3. Machiavelli is only relevant to dictators. A third misconception limits Machiavelli to tyrants and authoritarian regimes. According to this view, his ideas only apply where power is openly coercive, violent, or centralized. But Machiavelli's focus was never violence itself. It was stability. He analyzed incentives, perception, legitimacy, and institutional survival. These dynamics are not unique to dictatorships. They appear wherever coordinated action is required across large groups. Democracies rely on them. Corporations rely on them. Organizations, institutions, and even social systems rely on them. Power is not synonymous with violence. Power is the ability to coordinate behavior and secure compliance over time. In any complex system, authority must manage conflicting interests, limited information, and constant pressure. Machiavelli's insights apply not because systems are evil, but because systems are fragile. Consider a large organization. No single individual intends harm, yet decisions are made that feel impersonal, unfair, or cold. Not because the people involved are immoral, but because the structure rewards certain behaviors and filters out others. Machiavelli is not a theorist of dictatorship. He is a theorist of how systems behave under pressure. That is why his work continues to feel relevant long after the political forms he observed have changed. Why these misunderstandings persist? If Machiavelli has been misread for centuries, it is not because he was unclear. It is because his clarity is uncomfortable. Human beings prefer stories with heroes and villains. Moral narratives give us emotional orientation. They tell us who to admire, who to condemn, and where to place blame. Machiavelli offers neither comfort. He does not present power as virtuous or corrupt by nature. He presents it as reactive, adaptive, and deeply shaped by fear of instability. This removes the emotional scaffolding most people rely on to make sense of authority. Popular culture, understandably, simplifies. Complex frameworks do not travel well. They are reduced to labels, catchphrases, and moral shortcuts. Over time, Machiavelli becomes a symbol rather than a lens. The result is a thinker turned into a warning sign. We don't misunderstand Machiavelli because he was unclear. We misunderstand him because clarity is uncomfortable. Resetting the frame. This video has not argued that Machiavelli was right. It has not argued that he was wrong. It has argued that he was analyzing mechanisms, not prescribing values. If we continue to ask whether Machiavelli was moral, we miss what his work is actually useful for. A more precise question would be this: what does this framework reveal about how power behaves under pressure? Understanding a framework does not require agreement. It requires precision, and precision is where real insight begins.